Well, I want to welcome everybody tonight to our property management mastermind group. And tonight I want to start with talking about 5 ways to deliver better service and build tenant retention. And I think that's one of the things in the property management industry that we really need to look at is how do we build retention, especially with the things that are going on right now. You know, I've learned over the years that it's a lot easier to keep a tenant than it is to go get a new one. And it's a lot less expensive to keep a tenant than it is to go get a new one. If you ever sat down and really looked at the financial aspect of it, sometimes you can save somewhere in the area of $1,200 to $1,700 just by doing an upgrade or doing something that would be beneficial for the tenant that would keep them in the property. But I have 5 things that I want to just kind of touch on here a little bit. And the first one is invest back. I think that if we commit to investing back into the properties and into the people, and it seems really cliche, but the results are driven by a solid plan, well conceived and appropriately funded. So if we do things to the property regularly, and if our tenants see that, and if our tenants are renters, and there are a lot of people that are professional renters, right? They just rent for years. They see that you care about the property, that you put into the property, that you invest into the property. They have a tendency to want to just stay there a little bit longer. So what you do as an owner, if you give back and you upgrades or new carpeting or do some type of a rehab or exterior maintenance. I got in a discussion today on bigger pockets with another investor who said, I want to put some CapEx money into my property, and I'm wondering if my tenant's going to get mad about me working on the property from the outside. And my comment back to her was, I really think that your tenant would be grateful that you're taking care of the property, you're upgrading it, you're making it a nicer looking place. And I think that they would take the little bit of inconvenience of you doing some exterior maintenance on the property as a benefit for them in the long term if they're going to stay there. I think that we need to think community. And that's the second piece is if we think about the community around us, the stakeholders, we all own a piece of property in a neighborhood, and there's stakeholders that are involved in that asset with us. So it's not just you and that tenant, but it's the neighbors next door. It's the people who drive down the street. It's the businesses around there. What are we doing to make sure that we keep that property up? Never forget the time I drove past one of my properties because the people weren't paying rent. And as I drove by, her 4 sons and 2 of the neighbors' boys were sitting on the roof of the house. They had knocked all the screens out of the window. They were laying in the front lawn, and the lawn was about 6 inches long. That's not really a conducive situation for the neighborhood, and I don't really think that the neighbors really appreciate those types of situations. So curb appeals are really big, a really big thing and a really big issue.
Hey, Mike, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I just froze out, I think.
Yeah,
Say it again.
Can I just jump in for a second or no?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, that reminds me, I had a property down on 75th in Vernon. For those of you that aren't from Chicago, it's kind of in the hood a little bit, and it was a corner building. It was a beautiful building, and the people that lived on the street had a street association. So the block from 75th Street to 76th Street on Vernon, it was called the Vernon Homeowners Association. And it was run by this little old lady that had been here forever. And I'll never forget, when I'd go there, I'd go and I'd pick up all the garbage, that was in the bushes and stuff. Cause like you said, curb appeal, I wanted to look well. I remember one day she was walking, she introduced herself, and she couldn't have been a more pleasant woman. And she said, I'm the president of the association, and you've got the biggest building on the block, because it was, I forget how many units, but it was 21 or 28 or whatever. And I said, how can I help? How can I be part or support you? And she said, well, we have a barbecue every year. I'd like for you to come. I said, can I bring anything? She said, yeah, you can bring ice and drinks and charcoal. So we did that. And she said, the problem you're having is your garbage, your dumpster, when people don't put their garbage in plastic bags, it blows out of the dumpster. So she said, we have a deal with the hardware store around the corner where you can get discount garbage bags if you want to buy garbage bags for all your tenants. So that's what we did. And it, made a difference. And, I think that's what you're alluding to there, becoming part of the community.
Right. Yeah. It's a community asset, right? So you're giving back. That's funny, Carl. I own this property I'm talking about is over on Blackstone, just a couple blocks from Vernon, right? So at 87th and Blackstone. That's funny. So the next thing is embrace technology. Technology's here to stay, and I think that it's increasing. And if we use platforms like social media and we engage our tenants through social media platforms and engage new residents through that same thing, that helps enhance and gives back to what they might be looking for. Even in a single family home, if you offered your tenant free Wi-Fi, that might be something that, free data, that might be something that would give them more pause about leaving or trying to go somewhere new. More off-hour access. So as landlords, I know that it's really important for us to live a balanced lifestyle, and we can't continually be involved in our tenant's life all the time, much less working all the time trying to bring properties up to standards and things like that. But if there was a way that you could leverage yourself and give more off-hour access to your tenants if they needed it, so maybe an answering service, maybe somebody who could just field some calls just so somebody felt like somebody was there, or if you had a partner or a real estate agent that you worked with that maybe would be willing to help out with you. I think there's different ways, because the more programs we set up and the more ability that we have off-hour access, it helps our tenants. If you own larger multifamily properties, this is really important. You can have programs like concierge services. You could have package delivery stations. You could have garbage valets, paid parking spots. I'll tell you what, when I owned bigger properties, I always rented the parking spots closest to the entry doors, and you'd be surprised the people that were on waiting lists wanting to rent that spot for an extra $25 a month. But it really adds value to the revenue on the property. And then track your results. I'm a real advocate about tracking your results. If you don't know your numbers, your business is either staying flat or it's going backwards. Any major corporation and small company in the country knows what their numbers are. So they track how many tenants it takes to find one to move in, how many applicants they have to take, how many showings. If you know your numbers, you know how to control your time a lot better, and you know how you'll be able to manage your tenant a lot better. I have a 2-page report on those 5 topics on my website. So if you want to go to my website at mycoreintentions.com, you can download that and, just read through it for yourself. Maybe it'll give you a couple of tips or pointers. I always look at things like that as getting a couple of golden nuggets, right? And what can we learn from them? So I just kind of want to open it up. And if anybody has anything that they want to jump in and talk about, I know, Mary, we were talking at the beginning about, tenants and getting properties ready and kind of feeling the brunt of the coronavirus and the effects of the economy right now. But any other issues, or Carl or Tony, if you guys have anything you want to chat about?
This is Mary. I noticed, I think the items that you bring up are a little bit easier when you have multifamily housing to provide. It's a little bit more difficult for somebody like me. I have single family homes and they're scattered. I'm just not sure how I would create like a sense of community for that. One thing I do is when I purchase a property, I always go and introduce myself to the neighbors. I immediately start making improvements to the outside, and they're always grateful because most of the houses have been neglected for a long time. So that helps. But other than that, I don't know if anybody can recommend something that I can do. How do I create a sense of community amongst scattered single family homes?
I think that sense of community gets built in that one area where that one home is, right? So you have, um, you know, the neighbors and the neighborhood and what else is going on in there. Carl kind of talked about it with that homeowners association or that block association, right? You're right with when you have small, you know, small or medium, large size multifamilies, those types of things, those types of programs are easier. You know, one of the things, and it's kind of funny you brought that up, Wednesday night, I'm doing a webinar on creating wealth with small multifamily properties. And, you know, I am just an advocate that with 2 to 4 unit properties, you know, you're still in the residential arena, but with 2 to 4 unit multifamilies, you can create wealth for yourself. You create a better cash flow. You, you have economies of scale. You build in a little bit more safety. You know, it's I know when I've had in the past single family properties and that was all I managed, it was terrible when nobody lived there. I was always paying that mortgage payment out of my pocket. Um, but when I have a 2 flat or a 3 flat and somebody doesn't live there, it lessens the blow. So if somebody doesn't live in one of the units or I have a 10–15% vacancy factor, I still am able to pay my bills. I'm still able to create that sense of community. So, you know, it's a process to be able to get there if that's a direction that you want to go in. And, you know, maybe you like just being in that single family arena. And so, you know, I know Tony owns a lot of single family properties and he may have some ideas on that sense of community also.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, Mayor, what my wife and I have been doing for the last, actually 25 years, we've been having these single family homes is we do everything that you described in terms of getting to know the neighbors and the tenants and stuff. But we deal on the other side, we deal with the city a great deal because what we don't want is the city bothering the tenants or conversely by making the properties nicer, cutting the lawn. We make sure we talk to the property maintenance people. They know who I am. They know who my tenants are. If there are any issues that my tenants may have, they feel very comfortable either to contacting the city or me because of the relationship we all have with the city, whether it's the building inspector, the fire department, the police, or the property maintenance and the landlords. So we're very involved in the local cities here with the local government to make sure that, not the word that they don't bother our tenants because that's not really accurate, but to make sure that if there are any issues, that they know we're very active in the community in terms of the government perspective. So we've taken it that way. The other thing that I did a few years ago, and I'm going to start doing it again, is join the local Rotary Club. And oddly enough, that my project was to deliver dictionaries, if you can believe it, to the 3rd grade students. Every 3rd grade student in the city, I personally gave a dictionary to. And that was again, it goes, and within the Rotary Club, there were people from the city on there, the local police, and from the community. So that was another way that we sort of helped, that I found helped, at least helped us in the single family area.
It's interesting. I like the dictionary idea. We bought a 280 unit complex in Dallas one time from a guy who gave a Bible to every new tenant who moved in. So
Yeah.
that was interesting. He got a lot of pushback on it, and
Yeah.
something he really believed in, though. Mary, are your properties aren't in Chicago, are they? They're in the suburbs, right? South suburbs?
They're in the south suburbs.
You know,
Yes.
Tony's concept about it's a little bit easier in the suburbs to build that relationship with the cities because you have to have landlord license and in the south. I know in the northern suburbs we have to have landlord license all the time. South suburbs are the same, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And I definitely can see what you're mentioning. For example, one of the suburbs, I own 5 properties just in that one suburb. And the building inspectors knew me. They just knew me whenever, okay, I got another house done, to the point where they would walk and go, you did this house like the other houses, right? I go, yes. Boom, they would sign off right away.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they got rid of all the old inspectors. A whole new regime came in, and these guys are, I don't want to cuss, but oh my God, they're just horrible. They're horrible. So it's very difficult now to build a nice rapport with the city when they're not willing to also be nice basically and be landlord friendly.
Yeah.
But I can definitely see what you're talking about, where it is better to be on the good side of the inspectors and they know you. You know, a lot of landlords, they see the names on a piece of paper, but they've never met them. And at least I do walk in. They at least know me.
Right. Yeah, you're not just a face or a management company.
Right, right,
That's
right.
yeah,
No, Mary,
and, you know,
sorry, one of the things that we've done that actually work is we help out in the local political community, the local, you know, for the mayors and the councilmen. We have no, we don't care the parties they are, but if one of the judges, you know, is running for re-election, or the councilman or the mayor, then we get 58 or 60 signs and pop them in all our lawns. And then we go to the fundraised events, we buy tickets to the balls and, you know, the local fundraising things, not very expensive, but just to show that we're, you know, community. And we've met, because we've had some issues with the inspectors, just as you described.
Mm-hmm.
What I found is when we go ahead and work in the other arenas, it sort of helps because you just get to know more people in the city. And it's still, again, you're doing everything right. It's just a matter of whether people are they going to grandfather you in, are they going to nitpick you on certain things, and that's going to happen. But we found that by being engaged in all levels of the local government, it really helped us out a lot.
I can definitely see that. I'm just like hesitating, like, oh God, there's something else I gotta go do. You know, it's just, oh, there's only so many hours in the day, and I guess I have to just be willing to invest the time and the effort if, you know, make it a part of the business.
yeah. Are all your places full right now?
Yes, and I absolutely agree with you that it's easier and cheaper to keep a tenant than to find new ones. So I try to implement strategies for that. It's just occasionally, you know, you can't help it. You have the tenant turnovers. And I've been sort of fortunate that I've never gone without having a tenant in place in all of my properties for more than like a week or two at the very, very most. I rarely have vacancies.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
What do you
So,
think your average length of time that your tenant stays in a lease with you is?
like I've got somebody on year number 9 right now. The tenants that moved out here recently, I was actually a little surprised because they were only the one of 2 that moved out after 2 years. So when I find a new tenant, I mandatory initial 2-year first lease. And like I said, I was a little surprised that they actually moved out after those 2 years. All of my tenants stay. I would say 4 years, 5 years.
Wow. You know, I owned a house in Bartlett with an attorney for a while. Well, we owned it for about 18 years together,
Well,
and the same people lived in it for
yep,
18 years. And every year I would ask these people, you know, do you have an interest in buying a house? Nope, we don't ever want to buy a house. We just want to rent.
yep, yep.
You know, there's those people that are professional renters, and if you provide a good place, a nice environment, take care of it. The one thing they wanted us to do was have somebody cut the grass, so we had somebody cut the grass every week.
Yeah, that's a small price to pay for keeping a tenant for 18 years.
Yeah, yeah, and they were good tenants.
You know, I heard something on the radio the other day that they think the trend is going to be more towards that. You know, just because of the young people these days that aren't
Yep.
looking at, you know, like somebody, you know, I'm almost 60 years old. So, you know, ever since I was a kid, it was always drilled into our head. You know, part of the American dream is home ownership, and, you know, it's a good investment for tax write-offs and appreciation and, you know, all the things that we understand. However, that's not, this article was saying that that's not the conversation of the, you know, the millennials, you know, the 30, you know, people that are going, you know, between 28 and 38, they're totally okay with renting. You know, it gives them flexibility if they want to.
You're absolutely right, because I heard something along those lines, and they said the level of home ownership is the lowest since like 1950 something or other. And I was like blown away that you're absolutely right. People have just changed their mindset that home ownership is not their number 1 priority anymore.
And you know what's interesting is that mortgage rates are historically low,
Yep.
right? So your 30-year fixed is the same thing that my parents got a 30-year fixed at, you know, 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
And yet people are still preferring to rent than to buy.
Right, right. Tony, your average tenant stays how long?
You know, Mike, as you asked the question, I was just thinking about that. My wife and I were talking about that just a few days ago, and I would say we're probably, again, we're on month-to-month leases. It's a very interesting concept about the 2-year lease, but I would say ours are in the 4 to 5 year range as well. Now, certainly we have people that stay less than a year, but we also have a lot that are over 10 years. So I would say 4 to 5 years.
Well, that's also a good sign. I mean, that's a good sign that you're doing something right, because, people aren't going to stick around if they're not happy with the product.
I agree with that so much, because if you provide something that, they just can't go down the street and get, they're going to stay. Mary, one of the things that I find interesting is in the south suburbs, there are so many multi-units, 2
Yep.
flats, 3 flats, 4 flats. It seems like in every neighborhood, they're everywhere, right? And
Oh yeah.
when you go up north, you don't have that. You have townhouses and single family homes, and you have, spotty 2 flats, 4 flats, but not like you have in the south suburbs. You would think that in the investment opportunities in those, because there's so many, that there are better opportunities, or the same type of opportunity that you could find in a single family home.
Mm-hmm. So honestly, tenant turnover is one of the reasons why I decided not to invest in multifamily units. I just got the impression that living in an apartment is like a temporary thing. People, tend to move more often than single family homes. Is that not accurate? Or what has been your experience?
Well, my experience in the past has been that they did move quicker, but I think that we're seeing these trends start to change right now too, where they're gonna stay a little bit longer. But here's what offsets the multifamily. So you're still going to have, you figure a 10% vacancy factor. You're still going to have a vacancy factor, but the difference is that if you have a $2,000 mortgage payment and you're getting $3,000 a month in, but somebody's not living there, you still can pay your mortgage payment. You still have, there's that economies of scale.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you had to pay a few dollars of your mortgage out of your own pocket, it lessens the blow. But I think that we're going to see multifamilies, that whole apartment living, because there's a trend right now too. I think that people are leaving the city and moving back out to the suburbs, right?
Yep.
So there's that trend going on as well too. So, you watch the demographics and you watch what they're doing, and Carl brings up a great point about the millennials.
Yep.
That's where the money is right now, and those are your renters. So, for the most part.
That's true. I guess, as I mentioned, I just don't worry too much about the fact that when my tenants do eventually end up moving out, I don't worry too much about getting a new tenant, because when I advertise, I will get, now these are just inquiries where people say, hey, I'm interested in the house. I'll get 200 to 300 people contacting me about a house.
Yeah.
So I figured out of 200 people, if I can't find somebody who's qualified, then I'm doing something wrong. But I just kind of don't worry about those vacancies.
Do you ever ask them as part of your application if they're planning on staying for multiple years?
I do. Yes, I always do. I go through a very short set of pre-qualification questions that way, because there's no way I'm going to show. I used to do showings for everybody. There's no way I'm going to do showings for 200 people. So I do go through a set of small little pre-qualification questions.
So, what are your tenant standards? What do you look for in a tenant in one of your properties?
For the pre-qualification, I ask them, I tell them what my minimum credit score is And right there, I would say like 50% of the people drop out because they just will not meet the credit score requirement. I'll tell them what the income requirements are: 3 times the monthly rent, 1.5 month security deposit, and they fill out an application and I run the credit and criminal background check. So just by going through those couple little questions right there, as I mentioned, I must have half the people drop out.
And your credit score, I think you said before, is 650?
I dropped it down a little bit, 620, 620, 640,
Okay. Yeah.
which I don't think is asking a lot, but as I mentioned, I'm just very surprised that so many people's credit scores are in the 500s.
Yeah, it's interesting. Tony, you just had like 600 people apply for one of your properties, didn't you?
Yeah,
Wow.
we had a lady that was in for about 3 years, and the rent was actually $650 a month,
Wow.
and we raised
That's
it to eight, and we raised it to 800, and we had 657 inquiries.
Yep.
Amazing, you know.
Yep. And
And
now with social media, with Facebook Marketplace, oh my God, you get inundated.
Yeah. And
See,
so
in one of my properties, and I was interested to hear you say that you're asking, 800 for rent. One of my properties that I just rented, my rent that I asked for was $2,100. So that's a whole nother level there. And I still got lots of inquiries.
yeah, that's a different, no doubt about that.
Yep.
It's a little ways from 650.
Right.
Hey, Mike, guys, I just want to get your thoughts on something around here. My daughter works for Ford, and she's one of the millennials, but they're talking about not going back to work until January. But what was interesting about it was not only Ford, but many other companies are going to be closing and offing office building space. So one of the area in the local area here, we had a I don't know how many million square foot mall that they were going to go ahead and convert to commercial real estate, office buildings, and they're going to now look at converting it to apartment buildings because the commercial space, people are recognizing now that work has changed forever, and people are going to start offering. So I guess the question is, do you see the COVID with the change in commercial space, shopping centers and that stuff going way down, the need for them, at least in this area, office space, you think that's going to have any impact on the multifamilies down the road?
That's a great question. I don't see that. I think that there's still challenges in the retail sector and in the office sector, and especially now in office, because you've got people that aren't going to go back to the office. Instead of working every day in the office, they might only be going in once or twice a week. Teleworking the rest of the time is what it tends to start looking like. I was in Palatine yesterday. Yesterday was Sunday. Yeah, yesterday I was in Palatine, and I drove past a shopping center. I bet it's 500,000 square feet, 400,000 square feet, somewhere in that range. There used to be a Whole Foods in there. There was a TJ Maxx. There was some real anchor stores in there, and the whole thing was shuttered. And I was like, wow, and I've seen more and more of small strip centers closed up, just businesses closed down, and you wonder, what's happening, what's going to go on, right? So this kind of goes back to what this guy was saying the other day, that he feels that, it's 6 to 9 months before we really feel the effects. And I don't know. I think people are more optimistic right now. We saw what happened in 2001. We saw what happened in 2008. And I think that we're more prepared today, but still we've got, here's one of the indicators, right? We have a lot of the big players sitting on the sidelines with a lot of cash, just waiting because they think that the other shoe's going to fall, right? And they're going to be able to dive in and pick some deals up. You've got a lot of guys that are chasing deals that are not able to secure those deals because sellers aren't sure what to do. They can't price things right. Banks can't price money today. There's a real uncertainty in the market. And I think when you start to see that, it creates a volatility that we're going to experience something that, could be painful again.
Well, I think you're right, Mike. I mean, things go in 8 to 12-year cycles, or normally 10-year cycles. And, I always, a long time ago, I can't remember who it was, but, they were talking about, buying and selling. If you think of a cycle like a circle, and divide it in half from left to right, there's times to sell and times to buy. And, I think we're going into a buyer's market myself. Like you said, people with cash and, people that are afraid and not sure of the future, they just might be in to say, I'm getting out. I'm taking my chips off the table. I'm selling the property. And, I think there's going to be a lot of deals out there to be had, honestly. Now, as far as multi or single family, I'm not so sure about that, only because it's not really the space that I've played in. But I think what you and Tony were alluding to, some of those commercial properties I think there's going to be some opportunities there.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit ago. I'm still seeing from guys, at least in the Detroit area here, they don't get them anymore, but I know even up to a month ago, I was getting these forbearance agreements in the mail. And I think landlords and homeowners are signing these forbearance agreements, not understanding that this, in most cases, is a balloon at the end of 6 months. They're not going to be able to come up with that balloon. So I still think Mike, you're talking about 6 to 9 months. I still think we're going to hit a bubble in the springtime when these foreclosures come in, because people are not going to be able to go ahead and pay back these forbearance agreements, and they're going to lose the properties. So I agree. I think it's going to be a buyer's market come spring or next summer at this time because of, in my view, a lot of foreclosures, because people didn't understand these forbearance agreements when they signed them.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? You've got people who say, well, I'm not going to go back to work right now because I still have unemployment benefits and I'm making more money on unemployment than I was making at work. And so you've got that whole, situation going on again. Have they made a decision on another stimulus check? Because if the government's giving away another $1 trillion, that lets people sit on the sidelines a little bit longer again. So
Yes to another stimulus check, but unemployment, they're still fighting. They said they only want to give like 70% of a person's salary rather than the straight extra $600 a month or whatever the deal that they had before.
well, they should take that away, because that goes back to, if you give too much,
Yep,
then
that's exactly what they said.
yeah. So that's the piece that I think that you got to watch out,
Well, and I think a lot of that stuff we're not going to figure out until after the election, really. I mean, not to bring politics into the conversation, but the reality is, we're in an election year. So, a lot of the maneuvering and a lot of the strategy is preserving their votes, because that's the currency of the politician. That's their currency. So it'll be interesting. But yeah, I think they did say yes to the additional stimulus, and they're still debating over the whether they're going to still subsidize people with weekly income.
Yeah.
But Tony, I just want to comment real quickly on what you said, because, I really like the way you think. Most people are probably not thinking about that forbearance component or that forbearance factor that you're referring to. And I do believe you're right. I think people are going to get they're going to get hit from the sidelines. You know what I mean? They're going to get sideswiped with that, because they don't really understand. They think, oh, this is great. I don't have to pay my mortgage, for a period of time, and not read the small print. So I think you're right. I think that is going to have an impact. And if you're on top of it, you're going to be able to take advantage of it.
Do you think there's also going to be foreclosures that are a result of people losing their home because the businesses just never reopen? I mean, I think a lot, especially, of course, in the restaurant world, a lot of businesses are just not going to reopen.
Yeah, see, that was one of the comments I was going to make. I heard a number, I don't know if it was last week or a little before that, but there were 4,400 restaurants in the city of Chicago that closed down as a result of the corona thing. And 2,100 of them have decided to not reopen.
Oh, wow.
So, God, I'm trying to think of I drove past a restaurant today that, and I wish I could remember the name because was a pretty big, I can't remember, but I was surprised it was boarded up and didn't look like they had any idea of opening up again.
Where was it, Mike, in the city?
No, yeah, I'm trying to remember, Carl. It was over near Taylor Street. Um,
On Taylor Street?
no, it was. I want to say it was off of Western Avenue. Um, yeah, geez, I don't even remember, and I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was on the corner of Western and Taylor, I think.
Western and Taylor.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's a little bit further west. I used to manage a property right at Racine and Taylor, so I knew that neighborhood pretty well. But west of Ashland, not so much.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. I mean, there's going to be a lot of. I mean, listen, I know some people that are, they've got everything they own wrapped up into their inn or their restaurant, and they operate on slim margins. I mean, 2 or 3 nights a week are the only nights they really make their profit. The other 4 or 5 nights they're open they're just covering overhead, and.
Right.
And I really feel for these guys, like St. Patrick's Day was a huge one for these, both one's in Lincoln Park, the other's in Old Town in Chicago. And, they don't do the street festivals. Those are big days for them, weekends where they pull in 10, 20, 25,000 a day. So I'm not sure how I'm not sure. One's only 3 years old. The guy put about 3.5 million into the building, tore down a building, built a brand new, beautiful building. The other one is a 5th generation company, and they own a wine store and they own a liquor distribution. So they're going to be okay, and they own the building. But still, he's not making any money over there.
Yeah.
And a lot of businesses, they can probably survive for 2 or 3 months, but this is just dragged on, and it's going to continue. I don't know if a lot of these smaller or even larger businesses have the savings to survive for 8 or 9 months.
Yeah, and I think that the good news is, Mary, you're in a good place. Tony's in a good place right now. When you don't have any vacancies and
Yep.
you can weather the storm, hopefully your tenants can get by and continue to pay mortgages and or pay rents so you can pay your mortgages. And, if you can put some money on the side, I think after the first of the year, we're going to see some good deals. I had somebody make a comment the other day, well, if this guy gets in, the coronavirus probably goes away. You never hear about it again. But if this guy stays in, then we probably have this for the next 2 years, So it's just everybody's got an interesting perspective or conversation around all of this right now. And I think it's just, a matter of time. And over the next 90 to 180 days, we're going to really start to see some effects, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So. Are you in a buying mode, Mary?
Yes, but let me backtrack. I haven't been able to find too many companies yet who are doing the refinance, the cash out refis. So until I get more companies back on the line, I'm a little hesitant to buy them because I don't have an exit strategy yet, since I hold on to all of my rentals.
Yeah.
Mary, what part of the country are you in, Mary?
South suburbs of Chicago.
Oh, you're okay.
Yep.
And that's a great strategy, Mary, pulling cash out and using that. And
Right, the Burr strategy.
Yeah.
I saw 1 or 2 companies now have contacted me saying, yeah, we're back, we're doing it. But the terms, the rates are at 7% and 2 points. So it's like, that makes the cash flow a little difficult with those rates.
You know, Mary, do you not have a relationship with a local bank?
No, so I belonged to a real estate investing group, and we did kind of have lenders, but even those have stopped lending. I don't really have a great relationship with like a local bank. I don't know, just trying to explain the real estate investing and the BRRRR, it's just very difficult, I found.
Hmm.
Hey, Mary, Lakeside Bank, I'm sure you heard of Lakeside Bank, the Cacciatore family. Have
Yeah.
you ever done any business with them?
No, I do all my banking at Chase, and those are good for mobile apps, but they're not good for when you want to do like local things.
Right.
Well, they're huge banks. I mean, the beautiful thing of a First Eagle or a Lakeside is they're local. You know what I mean? And you, like, if you'd like, I can connect you. The president of our Southside Builders Association is a higher up at the bank on the mortgage lending side. If you'd like, I'd be more than happy to connect you guys, or Mike, I can connect you, and then you can connect Mary or whatever. But he's a good guy. He understands, especially if you're on the south or southwest side. That's where his sweet spot is as well. And it wouldn't hurt to have a conversation with him.
I would love it. Not to get off the topic too much, but the issue that I've run into is I used to have a W-2 job and I don't anymore. So I'm purely going on the cash flow, and that's where I run into difficulties with banks trying to understand that and document it and everything.
Well, the thing with Lakeside is this guy gets it, because most of his clients are investors. They're mostly professional real
I
estate
would
investors.
absolutely love his contact information if you don't mind.
Yeah, Mike, I'll send it to you, and if you want to forward it to Mary.
Yeah, or you guys can connect. It doesn't matter, but I can do that. Tony, give Mary the conversation about local banks.
Yeah, when we got up to about, I don't know, 50 or 60 houses, individual mortgages, nobody would touch me anymore, because for a while, you remember, you could have 20 mortgages in your name, then your wife could have 20 in her name, and then they cut it to 10 and 4 and 2. So I found somehow 2 local banks here, and they were more than willing to deal with me, because sort of, I talked earlier about, dealing with the city and the inspectors and, that type of stuff. Same thing with the bank. I put a presentation together that I can certainly send to you and Mike. Mike's seen it before, maybe 10, 15 slides to introduce myself, my family, the real estate strategy, how I'm involved in the community. And what I want to do is, I don't need any of the bank's upfront money to buy the property, and that's where the risk is. I need your money on the outside. Once I have the sweat equity into it and get my cash out refi. And the small community banks are all over it. Matter of fact, when this COVID started, just as an aside, when this COVID came out in March, April, the vice president of the community bank came over and said, we want to give you a forbearance agreement. And this was a real one, where 3 months, just push it out to the right. You pay your escrow payments for 3 months, and that's it, because they just wanted to make sure we were okay. We have, I think, 18 or 20 properties with them. But the small community banks, the 2 that we deal with, are just unbelievable, because it's their own money. So the guys lend to what they want to lend to. The Chase banks and the Standard Federals, they can't run fast enough for me and people like you,
Right. I would absolutely love to. It can't hurt to have a conversation. And I guess I'm just in a weird position where I don't have the 20, 30 properties. I'm, a smaller one. And I think I'm just in this weird position right now where I don't have a ton of capital, but I have the need. So, but I'm very solid financials. So again, I don't want to get off on a tangent, but it can't hurt to have a conversation, because I'm stuck in this weird middle position where I do need to develop a relationship with somebody.
And here, Mary, I just would encourage you to not think, oh, I'm just a small investor, because in a small community bank or a regional bank situation, they love the small investor because they want to help you grow to be a little bit bigger investor, right?
Okay, great. Thank you.
So, listen, you own 7 or 8 properties. I mean, you're doing well. So it's not like, it's not like you're just starting. You've been at it for a while. So,
Right. Okay.
but yeah, we can get you on the right track with that. So,
Great. Thank you so much.
so if you guys want to get that over to me, I can pass it on to Mary, or connect with Mary or whatever. And Mary, you want me to send you this link for this webinar Wednesday night?
I missed it. Which webinar is it?
Oh, I'm doing a webinar Wednesday night on creating wealth with small multifamily properties.
Absolutely.
I'll send you that and you can register for that if you want.
Because I have a couple of reasons why, no, I don't want to do it, but I do keep hearing over and over again that your cash flow is better, that there are a lot of, obviously there are a lot of positives to it. Otherwise people wouldn't do it.
Right, right.
Mike, can you send me a link too? Because I want to share that with some people. Is it, you mind if we invite some people? I mean, is that something you'd like us to do?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the more the merrier, right? So yeah,
Okay.
I'll send it over to you. All right. That's all I have. If anybody else has anything or. Well, it has been a pleasure, guys. Appreciate you guys being here. It's always an interesting conversation and, you know, good exchange. And looks like maybe we were able to help a little bit tonight. So that was good.
That's why I love joining these groups. I always learn a lot and make good connections. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, everybody.
Yeah, cheers. Have a good evening and we'll catch up soon.